business transformation. We hear that phrase thrown around all the time, right? But what does it actually take to pull one off successfully? Well, today we're going to cut through all that noise. We're going to look at a super powerful framework for making deliberate, high-impact changes that actually deliver real, measurable growth. So here's the plan. First, we're going to tackle the one big question every leader faces. Then, we'll dive deep into the 6 powerful levers that will guide your decisions. After that, we'll see how these levers work as a kind of litmus test in the boardroom. And finally, we'll talk about how you can turn this whole framework into your company's superpower.
All right, let's jump in. Section 1, the transformation question. You know, pretty much every company out there is trying to transform, but the real challenge is figuring out how to separate all the busy work from the breakthroughs that actually create value.
This is it. This is the question that keeps leaders up at night. I mean, think about it. You've got countless projects, brand new technologies, and a ton of competing priorities, all screaming for your attention. So how do you focus on what's actually going to drive results? The stakes are incredibly high, and a wrong move can be super costly. So what's the solution? Well, it's a framework built on 6 value levers. A better way to think about them is as decision filters, or maybe strategic guardrails. They're there to keep your transformation on track and make sure every dollar and every hour you spend is invested in what truly matters. And that brings us to Section 2, the 6 levers for growth. This is really the heart of the framework. These are those strategic guardrails for your business we just talked about. So let's meet them. So here they are, the big 6: revenue growth, margin improvement, differentiated offerings, customer satisfaction, ecosystem engagement, and last but not least, governance, risk, and compliance, or GRC for short. Each one of these is a critical lens you can use to evaluate any new initiative. Let's unpack them one by one. First up, the most direct one, revenue growth. For any new project, you just have to ask this simple question: will this grow the top line? If the answer isn't a really clear and confident yes, you've got to seriously question why you're even doing it. But hold on, growing the top line is way more than just selling more. It's a whole sophisticated mix of things, right? It's expanding into new markets, innovating your products, finding smart pricing strategies, holding onto the customers you already have, and of course, making your sales team more productive. Okay, lever number 2 is margin improvement. Look, growth is awesome, but if it's not profitable, it's just not sustainable. This lever is all about boosting efficiency and squeezing the absolute most value out of every single dollar. So, if you want to improve margins, you have to know where your money is going. Let's take one of the biggest expenses in any modern company, the tech budget. Do you really know where all that money is being spent? Well, the 70-20-10 principle shows us a pretty startling reality for most companies. A huge 70% of the IT budget is often just spent keeping the lights on, maintenance. Another 20% goes to basic upgrades. That leaves a tiny 10% for actual innovation. And that little sliver is a massive barrier when you're trying to improve margins and get ahead of your rivals. Lever number 3 is all about differentiated offerings. In a crowded market, you basically have 2 choices: stand out or become a commodity. This lever is about building products and services that are, unshakably distinct and desirable. And how do you do that? You build this distinction through constant innovation, absolutely superior design, and an unbeatable customer experience. When you put all those together, you create what's called a competitive moat around your brand, which protects your value and your prices from the competition. The 4th lever is customer satisfaction, and this one's a biggie. A transformation is only a success if your customers actually feel the benefit. That's why customer satisfaction is probably the most reliable early sign that you're on the right track. Happy customers don't just stick around, they become your biggest fans. Lever 5 is about something called ecosystem engagement. And the idea is simple: you can't transform alone. Real, lasting change requires enthusiastic buy-in from literally everyone, from your own employees all the way out to your external partners and suppliers. Your ecosystem is huge. It includes your employees, your partners, your suppliers, your customers, and even your investors and the board. When this whole network is aligned and engaged and motivated, you create this powerful momentum that's almost impossible for anyone else to copy. All right, our final lever is GRC, governance, risk, and compliance. The question here is all about safety and responsibility. Now, GRC often gets a bad rap, right? People see it as bureaucratic red tape or just a cost center. But trust me, that's a huge mistake. In reality, strong governance, good risk management, and solid compliance, these are actually powerful growth enablers. They build trust with your customers, your partners, and your investors. And in today's world, trust is the absolute foundation for sustainable, long-term growth. Okay, on to section 3, the boardroom litmus test. So now we have our 6 levers. The question is, how do we actually use them to make better decisions? This part is all about separating the small tactical fixes from the truly strategic breakthroughs. And this is the key difference right here. A tactical fix might be a tempting short-term band-aid, but it doesn't fundamentally move any of our 6 levers. A true strategic investment, on the other hand, moves at least one lever, and ideally it moves several, creating this awesome ripple effect of value across the entire business. Which brings us to our final section, making levers your superpower. Now we're going to get super practical. It's time to turn this framework from a cool concept into a concrete tool you can use for focused execution. The process is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. First, you map every single initiative against the 6 levers. Does it drive revenue? Does it improve margins? Second, define clear, measurable KPIs for each one. How will you know if you succeeded? And third, this is the most important part, give top priority to the projects that move multiple levers at once. That's always where you'll find the biggest wins. And that is the key to unlocking exponential growth. The most impactful, most game-changing initiatives are always the ones that create that ripple effect we talked about, the ones that move multiple levers at the same time. These are your true game changers, and this is where you should be placing your biggest and your boldest bets. By embedding these 6 levers into your strategy, you get the clarity and the discipline to focus only on what truly moves the needle. So, as we wrap this up, the real question for you is, which levers are you going to pull first to unlock your company's growth?